Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Married Now Widowed. We're your hosts. I'm Kayla.
And I'm Nadine, and this podcast is about navigating life after loss through unfiltered conversations.
Welcome back to another episode, guys.
Welcome back.
Today we have another special guest joining us, Laura. Welcome, Laura.
Hello.
Welcome.
Thank you so much for coming in and being open with us. So Laura is going to take us through her journey. She is married to someone who has been through pretty much what the entire podcast is about.
Yeah.
So we will let you really take it away. And if you want to share a little bit about your husband and a little bit about his story, that would be great. And then we can sort of get into how that's impacted you, because we know it's impacted you greatly, as it does us all. Nadine and I firsthand know what it's like to be on the other end of that. So
Definitely.
yeah.
Definitely. Well, my husband was first diagnosed in 2022. Sorry, I have to make sure I get the dates right,
Yeah.
so I get confused.
Yeah.
So 2022. Now, his father had just passed away.
Oh, wow.
And we were dealing with that because we lived with his father, and we lived with his brother as well. And then a few weeks later, after his father had passed away, he felt a lump, and he went and got it checked, and the doctor's like, oh, I don't know what that is. Let's just put some cream on it and we'll see what happens. It goes away. So he did that, and then he went back and he's like, oh, it hasn't fixed. The doctor's like, oh, okay. Let's just send you to get it cut off and let's see what happens.
Right.
So my husband went to get it cut off. We went and we got it cut off. We were making jokes, him and I, beforehand. We're like, oh, you got this lump, making fun of it.
Yeah.
We're like, it's going to be fine. Like, we didn't think, I didn't think cancer.
Course.
And
No, you wouldn't.
I've had anxiety my whole life, and especially when it comes to like health as well.
Yeah.
And when this all happened, I did do one Google search, and I was like, no, don't be silly. So I kind of put it away.
Yeah.
Put that to bed. So then we went and he had the surgery and he got that lump removed. And then he went back to have a check, and all of a sudden the doctor was like, oh, it's come back as a skin cancer. And my husband was like, what? A skin cancer? And this doctor obviously wasn't equipped to deal with this sort of diagnosis or anything like that. So at this point in time, we thought it was a skin cancer thing. So then after that, it's the waiting game and all the tests and everything like that. You get sent to another doctor. So when that happened, we then got sent to another specialist. Now, this specialist only deals with this type of cancer, and it is a very rare cancer. It's penile cancer, and it affects, I think, about 45 people in New South Wales, and all those people go to this doctor.
Right.
He is the best. He's the professor, and he's the only one that deals with this.
Yeah.
So basically, we were then made for these appointments. We went there. Now, the time between he has cancer and us not really knowing what kind of cancer, it was so scary, so stressful. And then that's where my anxiety started to heighten a little bit. And I was still trying to keep calm. So then after we had the appointment made, we went to him, and then the doctor's like, okay, you've already had this cut out, but the biopsy isn't good enough. We need to do another biopsy, okay? He's like, at the moment, it looks like, the cancer could all be cut out. We don't know.
Yeah.
So he had to go and get another biopsy. And that, again, was the waiting game, and that's where my anxiety really heightened. I started to think, okay, well, I know it's cancer, but I still don't know what kind. I don't know what stage. I was looking at skin cancers at this point of time because that's what we thought it was.
Right.
It wasn't until we went to that professor that he told us that it's not a skin cancer, it's actually penile cancer, and that he had to have another surgery to remove more of it.
Right.
So then we had to do a second surgery. He also had to get his lymph nodes tested
Yeah.
to see whether the cancer was there or not.
Yeah.
So at this point in time, we were navigating the loss of his dad. His mentally disabled brother lives with us, so we were navigating, obviously, look after him.
Yep.
And my husband getting diagnosed with cancer. And then on top of that, I started to have a mental breakdown myself.
Sorry, can I just ask, his father passed from cancer also or something different?
No, he had a heart
Okay,
attack.
cool. Okay.
But his mum did pass away from cancer 6 years before that, right
There's
before
a bit
our
of
wedding.
cancer in the family.
Yes, but it's a total different thing. There's
Right.
it's not a genetic link.
Okay.
Totally different. This wasn't caused by that at all. The thing with penile cancer, it's actually caused by the HPV virus. Now, that's something us females get vaccinated against, our cervical cancer.
Yeah.
So you just think that maybe if the males had that vaccination, that could stop that type of cancer. As well.
I wonder, have you spoken to?
I asked the doctor, because when I said to him, what caused this, he said, there's a range of factors, everything like that. But then they tested it and they said, okay, it's HPV positive. And I was like, okay, well, do I need to get checked?
Yeah.
But I had been vaccinated against cervical cancer and that. So look, I don't know. I'm not a doctor. I don't know the full direct links. But obviously you can draw your conclusions.
Yeah.
But yeah, like you just think if the boys in our age group were given this, that's like one less risk factor.
And maybe those 45. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, for sure.
So you'd have to get like a doctor to explain full ins and outs of it. But yeah, you just think like, wow, we had that cervical cancer vaccination.
Yeah.
Because it's the same sort of thing that causes cervical cancer. It's the same thing that causes that type of cancer as well.
That's interesting.
Yeah. So basically, after we got the second biopsy and he said that he had to go for the surgery again. So we went into surgery again and they had to remove lymph nodes. So they removed the lymph nodes on, I think it was the left side first. Can't fully remember. It's a bit of a blur for me. But it was the left side. They removed all the lymph nodes. And I think the first one was positive. Now, because the first one was positive, the second one wasn't. They said that that's good. They've got enough. We don't need any more treatment. He's considerably in remission, cancer-free.
Oh, okay.
No chemotherapy or anything?
Not at that stage, no.
Okay.
Then it was fine. He had to go for checks every 3 months.
Right.
And that. But he was always to make sure that when he was checking, he had to check his lymph nodes in the groin to make sure there was no lumps there.
Yeah.
That's if the cancer was coming back, it was coming back in the groin. And in that area. So that's where you always had to check. So we'd go to the checks. Now, after he had his surgery and everything, that time was really hard for me. Even before that, I was going through a lot of anxiety. Like I'd lost so much weight, maybe about 40. I was about maybe 46 kilos at that point.
Wow.
I wasn't sleeping. I went to the psychologist, a psychiatrist. I needed to go up on antidepressants at that point in time. And I went, I joined a few group therapy sessions, and I also did a few cognitive behavioral therapy courses so that I could actually work on my mind and myself and learn those techniques in order to get myself out of that anxious state.
So was this heightened from his illness or, okay, but you've always had anxiety even prior to this?
I've always had anxiety and everything, but the thing is, when this happened, then I started thinking that I had all these diseases.
So and health anxiety, which is quite common.
So I was convinced that I had a brain tumour. I went a brain scan. Yeah, I was convinced.
You had a brain scan?
Yep, I had a brain scan. I was convinced. But to me, I had all these symptoms.
Right.
Because I was so anxious and everything. And then I'm like, oh my God, my husband has cancer.
Yeah.
If that can happen to him,
that can happen to me.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I was like, holy shit.
Yeah.
So then I think all the thoughts started spiraling and everything like that. And you get that obsessive thought, intrusive thoughts. And I think a lot of people do get
that's very normal.
all of that. Yeah, exactly. And it was hard because obviously I want to be there to support him. He's the one going through cancer. And I'm going through all these made up diseases in my head.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so it was to the point, I'd lost so much weight. So I was like, all these anxious, it's so funny what the mind can do.
Yeah.
Very
the mind
strong.
Can play so many tricks on you and it can make you have physical symptoms that aren't even there.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And I was having all of those symptoms, like you name. So I would Google a symptom. I was like Dr. Google. I would Google a symptom and I'm like, I have that.
Yeah.
And that, so like I started getting pins and needles in my fingers, everything like that. I'm like, oh my God, I have Parkinson's, I have MS.
Yeah.
I looked at all of those. I was like, I can smell weird things. Like I'm starting to smell things. You notice a lot more things and everything. There wasn't any. There may have been. I was like, I can smell smoke. Of course I could smell smoke. It was winter. There was people burning their fires and everything.
Yeah.
But to me, I thought, oh my God, I have a brain tumor. That's a symptom. Or I have a tumor in my nose or something like that.
Yeah.
You know, it's just because he had this rare cancer, and I was like, wow, like that could happen to me. And when you have this around you, you freak out and
of course
think out. So I think like my freak out was the way I was dealing with it. And I didn't really know how to deal with it, you know, but lucky, you know, I've got really good family and good friends, and they all supported as well. But it was really hard because I couldn't be there for him as much as I wanted to be at that point in time, because I was struggling mentally. And he's worrying about me when he really should just be worrying about himself. It's about him. Like he's the one with cancer. Yeah. And then your thoughts start to spiral like, oh my God, I'm going to be a widow at 34 years old.
Yeah.
Like, you know, we've had a tough marriage, like to get where we are. You know, his mum passed away right before our wedding. Yeah. Then there was COVID. Yeah. Then our house has taken so long to build. Our builder went into liquidation. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Wow.
All these things was like everything was putting a pause in our lives. You know what I mean? And then we're living with his dad. Then his father passed away. And then, you know.
One thing after another.
Exactly. Yeah. And then finally we're like, yay.
We can breathe.
Yeah.
And then bam.
Yeah.
So then, you know, then there was still the unknown with his brother, everything like that.
So when you were going through this sort of health anxiety, he was in remission, right?
No, I was actually going through the health anxiety in the stages between us finding out the biopsy, the results, him getting the second surgery.
So it started quite early on, really.
Yes.
Yeah.
It started basically, the lights went off, like the trigger went off in my brain as soon as the words cancer came in.
And what was he like towards you?
Well,
at
points he was okay, then other points he was like really angry.
Yeah.
Because he didn't understand.
Yeah. And like he obviously didn't have the capacity he felt bad because he couldn't help me either.
Of course.
But he wanted me to be okay, but he didn't want me to be going through this because of him.
Yeah, I understand that.
And then like just in my brain, like I was having like heart palpitations, like just the physical symptoms you get, and you name it, I had those symptoms.
Wow.
I like at one point had like a list of diseases that I thought I
was
ruling out
that
in my
you
head.
had.
I'm like, I'm ruling, because I'm like, yep, I've got this symptom. Yep, I've got that symptom. Yep, I've got this symptom.
I mean, we all think things sometimes, but to actually go to the extent of doing a brain scan, that just shows how real this was for you.
I mean, right? I've heard of, and I can speak from myself, but also people that I know that have lost somebody significant in their life. I know that after they lost them, they then went on this whole, you know, spiral, and they were literally spiraling, going, okay, there's something wrong with me. There's something like,
yes, that's right.
But it was after that person passed away, not during a diagnosis.
I agree. I do hear about that. I mean, even myself.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Even myself. That's right.
Things all the time about cancer, and oh no, my husband died from cancer, and then I feel something, and I'm like, oh no,
I need to get it checked.
Both of us died from it. Like it's just dramatic, and your mind does.
But it's always
I have that all the time.
That's right. I haven't heard really many of during.
So when you girls were going through that with your husband, you guys didn't have any anxiety on yourself, or
I didn't have health anxiety. Did you?
Not health anxiety. Yeah. Not health anxiety. Yeah. The normal, obviously, anxiety and stresses that you would get when your
my husband
partner,
die?
When your partner's going through something like that. But not health anxiety. I think health anxiety came after.
And you know what I will say, even now, right? So obviously my husband's passed away. Sometimes, so I'm a smoker, and every time I'm smoking, I think, oh fuck, I really shouldn't be doing this. Like my husband died from cancer. I'm the only living parent for my son. If something happens to me, I'm screwed. But I'm clearly not anxious enough to quit, right? Otherwise I would quit.
But then everything else makes you anxious.
Yeah.
Like I have a migraine, I've got a brain tumor, I've got a hit. Like
if you're comparing like anxieties, I feel like mine's probably so minimal in comparison to what you were going through.
Went
because
through,
if I was really having health anxiety, I wouldn't be a smoker. trigger to this day. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, you just get triggered. So I think, that was a trigger.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was just that triggered everything. And then I was just spiraling and I didn't know how to stop it. So, and I think because also like the worry that I had for him, like, oh my God, he's going to die.
Yeah.
Those sort of things. Then you feel that in your body.
Of course.
You feel that heart palpitations, you feel the cold sweats, everything like that. And then that comes out and you feel that at night as well.
Yeah.
So I was getting like nocturnal panic attacks and that, waking up in balls of sweat, everything. And then I would Google that and then I'd be like, oh my God, that's the symptoms of Hodgkin's lymphoma. Or, do you know what I mean? All those sort of things. But really it was all anxiety. Like, So I need to read all these horror stories of people that were misdiagnosed and all of those sort of things.
But the mind is just so powerful.
It is powerful.
The mind is very powerful, and the amount of symptoms that it can cause you.
And it's subconscious. Clearly all of that stuff that happened to you was subconscious because this is happening to you while you're in your sleep.
Yeah, that's right.
You're sleeping,
and obviously you've gone to the doctor, you've done your checks. There is nothing wrong with you, but it was just
But in my head, I was like, no,
you were convinced.
I'm still getting all these symptoms. Like, what if it's something that you've missed?
Yeah.
And and then while I'm on trying to make sure that I don't have any of these diseases which weren't even real.
Yeah.
My husband's actually going through something.
Yeah, that's right.
And so it was really hard. So, but after he had that surgery and then it went back to the checks every 3 months. So after they pulled the lymph nodes out, they said that, everything's fine and just got to keep it checked.
How were you at that point? Were you
I started to calm down.
Okay.
Yep. But then I always had it in the back of my mind. I'm like, oh my God, we've got to live with this for the rest of our lives.
Yeah.
And it's always going to be forever. Every time it came to the check around, I started getting anxious.
Just going to say that. Every time it's scan time, it's
scan time. Oh my God, scan anxiety. Can I just tell you that is the most scariest thing ever. Even though I wasn't having the scan.
Yeah.
But just waiting.
No, but as his wife, it's...
And I think this is why we wanted to get you on our podcast, because we do have a lot of support people who listen to our podcast and we speak about it all the time. So, it's... one thing when we're speaking on like about our husbands and, how they passed and what they went through. But I think also, it's important to recognize as, carers or, caretakers, like what we go through as well. Yeah. So, I think that's really important.
It was a bit hard. Like I remember I was going, like my parents helped so much through that because I was like, in a daze as well. And I remember like the day of his surgery in that morning, I was like having major panic attacks. I was like throwing up in the bathroom.
Wow.
He's going in to get the dye into his arm and I went into the bathroom and vomited. Because I was so anxious.
Yeah.
But he was good. He was calm and he's so strong.
I bet.
Very
you have
strong.
to be to go through that,
oh my
right?
God.
Definitely.
He's strong.
Like sometimes I think we're strong for what we go through, but honestly, it's nothing compared to what they go through.
Yeah.
I agree.
They're the ones that are sick. It's just, and you feel helpless.
Yeah.
And then you feel bad too because obviously like I went through this, I even went and saw a neurologist and it was to the point the neurologist is like, there's nothing wrong with you. Go back to psychology. I'm like, okay, cool. I'm like, she basically just told me in a nice way that I'm crazy.
Get help.
And are you like paying like consult fee after consult fee with all of these specialists?
Yeah, look, some of them, I think one of them felt sorry for me and bulk billed it. I kind of told them like the whole story. Some of them felt sorry for me and some of them did bulk bill me, which was good. But I was like a frequent flyer at the doctor. He's like, what's wrong now? But like it's funny to think about it now.
Now it's funny, you can laugh.
But while you're going through it,
like I was to the point where I was like, wow. But so like even after I saw her, she's like, there's absolutely nothing wrong with you. I was like, okay. She gave me the ECG too. Like she's not denying that I did have the symptoms. That's the thing. And the symptoms were physical, and that's what anxiety can do to you.
That's right.
Anxiety gives you physical symptoms, and a lot of people get them confused.
Yeah.
But now, and when I'm in a state of anxiety, it's hard for me to recognize, but I am a lot better now. I can recognize those symptoms. So I don't freak out as much. And that's where you've got to get to. You've got to be onto the point where you're like, okay, is this reality or is this just anxiety? And you got to step back and you do breathe. I do a lot of yoga now, meditation, breathing techniques. I read a lot of books. And it helps. And it helps to connect with other people that do have anxiety.
Yeah, of course.
Like there is, mental health, but I still feel like there's a stigma around it, but there shouldn't be, especially
Definitely not.
Yeah.
that everyone goes through it and all those sort of things. And in sort of that, I was still, trying to work full time, still trying to do my side hustles.
Yeah.
Yeah. Of
Social
course.
media stuff,
Yeah.
everything like that.
And support your husband.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
All of that.
Yeah.
That's what I mean. So it was like a whole big
Yeah.
mess.
Yeah.
So then after the after he was fine, my anxiety did start to calm down and things started to go a bit back to normal, which was good. But again, around scan time, things started to freak out a little bit. Then it came, so that was 2023. Sorry, that was 2022, like April. By like, say, September 2023, September, October, I started to feel like myself again.
Yeah.
And he was in the clear. So I was like, okay, good. And I've got some of the best friends in the world. I've got one friend that like I would call and she would answer and listen to my stupid thoughts no matter what. One of my cousins is a doctor. The amount of times I would call her and tell her that I have this and she's like, no, you don't.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like sometimes you just need that reassurance.
Absolutely.
So it's really good to have that support network. And basically after he was okay, things started to get better, back to normal and all of that. But then, I was on a higher dose of my medication at the time and then I just felt numb after that.
Yeah.
I don't know. I went on a thing where I just felt numb. And I think
because of the medication?
I don't know. Whether it was that, I don't know whether it was just everything that happened. Like it was a lot to deal with.
Of course.
I mean, we're still processing his father passing away.
Yeah.
That's right.
Processing the fact that now my husband is his brother's carer.
Yep.
And he's living with us.
Yep.
Processing, our house is not being built still. Like
Yeah.
that mess. We're all still getting over all the COVID.
That's right.
That's right.
Lockdowns.
And the impacts that COVID has on
had with us. You know what I mean?
finances and
Yeah.
everything. Yeah.
So I just felt numb. But things were normal for a little bit. And then it came, he was doing his checks and everything. And as I said, I got, a bit nervous. And then there was a check that came in July 2023. Or was it June? So he had his scan and the scan came back fine. And the doctor's like, okay, we'll see you in 6 months. So my husband came home and then maybe like 2 weeks or 3 weeks after the scan, my husband's like, hey, can you come and feel this? And I'm like, oh, okay, my heart dropped. I'm like, okay, what's wrong? So I felt his groin and I'm like, oh, okay. And he goes, that's a big lump. I'm like, okay, like, is that a lymph node? Now we knew he still had lymph nodes on that side.
Right.
I just can't remember if it's the left or right.
Right.
But
But
the other side-
essentially this was the other side now.
Yes, the other side still had lymph nodes. It had one less lymph node because they remove one lymph node from one side, one lymph node from the other side. And if it's positive or negative, then they know. So if the lymph node's positive, they remove the next one.
Okay.
If that one's negative, you're
Then-
good.
okay.
That's fine. Yeah. If that one's negative, then it's not going to be in the next one. Yeah. But truth behold, I think that cancer actually did miss that lymph node and went into that second one because we found that lump. He went and made the appointment with the doctor straight there and the doctor did the biopsy and he's like, unfortunately, the cancer's come back. So this was 2023 now.
Oh.
About
2023. Okay. Yeah.
around June, July 2023. So then it was all over again. But I didn't spiral this time.
Okay.
And I think maybe because I had spiraled before.
Yeah.
And maybe that all happened because this time I needed to be stronger.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah.
Because this time he had to go through chemo.
Right.
Right.
Okay.
So he had to have another surgery and they removed all the other lymph nodes. And that's a tough surgery. Like the recovery as well.
Yes. That's a hard one.
Yeah.
Even just the recovery from the first surgery, like the catheter, the drains, everything like that, monitoring all of that. And then, so he had to have chemotherapy. That freaked me out a little bit. But, I was just like, no, just put your big girl pants on.
Yeah.
And just, you have to do it. And I remember we went to see the doctor, then we went to see the chemo doctor, the oncologist, and she said, you've got to do this and this and this for 3 months. And then it should be, we should be in the clear.
Yeah.
So he started chemo in, I think it was October of 2023. And he did it October, November, December. So he was off work at that point in time.
Was that his first round of chemo?
He only did 3 months.
Okay.
So
but
the chemo,
October, was that the first
Yes.
one? Okay.
first time.
Right.
Yeah. How many times did your husbands go through chemo?
I know the only reason why I say that is because my husband's first chemo treatment was in October also.
Oh, really?
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
How many
So-
times did he do it? Or?
No, he started in October and I think he finished in January. He probably had around 7, maybe.
Yep.
7 treatments.
Yep. And did it go
Before
for
he
3
went
days?
into-
Or how long did it go for?
No, so his first the first one that he'd do it for 2 weeks. So he'd do
Yep.
the first one obviously like intravenous.
Yep.
And then that was just for like 4 hours.
Yep.
And then he'd go home.
Yep.
He'd have all the symptoms that week. Then the
Yep.
following week he'd have to take chemo through a tablet.
Yep.
Then he'd have a week off and then he'd go back.
Similar sort of regime for my husband.
Yeah.
But I don't think he did the chemo tablets. I know there was tablets afterwards.
Yeah.
But I think he was okay. I don't think we had to take anything the second week. But the first week, yep, he'd go for the first 3 days. He'd be in the chair, receive the chemo. And I remember going there the first day with him and I was just like...
It's hard. It's not easy.
You see a lot of people. And
Yeah.
everything like
That's the
that.
thing. Your whole surroundings.
Did you go to like a cancer center or where did
we
you?
went to the Westmead one.
Okay. Yeah.
Is it called St. Princess Mary's, I think?
Okay.
We went to that one. And yeah, he did get he got a lot of cramps, side effects. He did lose his hair.
Oh, he lost his hair.
Yep. Did your husbands lose their hair?
My husband
My
didn't.
husband didn't
Yeah,
either.
which was, I thought
It was
he
thinning
would.
out, but he didn't. Yeah, same.
Oh, you know what happened to my husband? Actually, I just remembered. This is so weird. He went grey, totally grey.
Oh,
for
Mick
like,
was already going great.
no,
So
for like
this was
3
like
weeks, and then came back.
No way.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow,
he
that's
looked like
interesting.
Eminem. I just remember
Wow.
that. Actually, I haven't thought about that in ages. Yeah, he went fully grey from the chemo. Didn't lose any brows, lashes, hair on his nothing.
Yeah.
Just went grey.
Wow.
And then back. So
No, Mick's
strange.
hair was falling out, but it wasn't like he'd wake up and he'd look at his pillow and he'd be like, "Look at all the hair."
Oh, really? There was.
But it wasn't. It's like it was growing back at the same
Right,
time. It
right.
wasn't like he went bald or anything like
So
that.
he
Yeah.
Look, he started to lose his hair. I remember we were actually making balloons for my nephew's birthday, and while we were making it, I saw like pieces of hair on it. And then, like, it was getting stuck to the balloons.
Right.
And then I think that's when we realised that.
Okay.
So then he put a hoodie on, not a hoodie, like a beanie on.
Yeah.
To
Just cover it up.
yeah, sort of to cover it up and to stop it from falling out. And then so I think after that he just shaved his head.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you could tell because then there wasn't any like stubble growing back. He didn't
That's
need to
right.
shave it
Yeah.
throughout. And he didn't lose his eyebrows completely.
Okay.
Thinned
Right.
out.
Yeah.
But other than that, he still looked really good. And
Right.
he didn't lose his hair the first cycle, like the first week or anything like that. It wasn't
Okay.
until the second one that he did. But now my husband shaves his head because he likes it. But
Yeah.
sometimes, like if he cuts it too short, I do get a bit of flashback.
Triggered.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Get
Yeah.
a little bit triggered.
Yeah.
And like he doesn't really understand, but
Yeah.
like for me, it's just a little bit triggering because that's scary for me because like I almost lost him twice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it
Yeah.
is scary, and that's something I'm going to be having to deal with for the rest of our lives.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
His last check was last year, so his check is coming up again, and I'm okay now. But once it gets a little bit closer,
Oh, you'll
it's
be
scary.
full of nerves.
How often is he getting checks now?
Now it's 6 months. So
Okay.
after the chemo, they did a scan, and they don't even normally do that, but I kind of pushed for it.
Yeah.
Um.
Just peace of mind, right?
Well, yeah. And
You should
yeah,
push
so they
for
did
it.
it. Yeah.
Definitely. I remember with my husband, we used to do full body and then head scans separately, and we
Yeah.
always did full body and head a week later, full body and head a week later, and this was for years and years and years. And I remember towards the last sort of, I don't know how many months it was, maybe like 6 months before he passed away, they didn't do a head scan for quite a while. Every time we did a body, they'd miss out on a head. And I used to say, like when we'd have our meetings, which was very often, I said, "Oh, we haven't done a head scan, can we book that in?" And they used to be like, yeah, and never book it in. And then once I was like really agitated about it because I'm like, I just need to know that the brain is clear. I don't know what it is about me and brain tumours. I feel like if you have a brain tumour, that is like the ultimate cancer that you don't want. So I was always super worried about that. And then one time I just got frustrated in the room and I'm like, can we book a head scan? Like, you've been saying yes for 3 months, you haven't booked anything. And she's like, yeah, just book it at the front desk. And I'm like, okay. So I went out and she actually said to me in the room, I'll never forget, she goes, clear cell sarcoma doesn't travel up. So it's very unlikely he's going to have anything in his brain. I'm like, yeah, that's okay. I just want to check because we also didn't know we'd be in the position we are now,
That's right?
So I went and I booked it in and I will never forget, we got those results back and he had a brain tumour.
Shit.
And I was
What?
like, yeah. I was so like, yeah. I'll
Is
never
that what
forget
eventually?
that. No, actually. He died. This is so interesting. So his body was riddled with tumours. And actually when you made a comment and said that your husband said, I'll come and feel this, it gave me like a bit of PTSD because that's like was constant in our house.
Yeah.
Like, and my husband, he had a great sense of humour. He'd always laugh at it. It's like, oh, look, feel this one here. Look how big this one is. Feel this one. His body was riddled with tumours, right? He actually died from one particular tumour growing in an artery which blocked the oxygen.
Okay.
So it was really, he couldn't breathe. That's
Right.
really what it was.
So he didn't have organ failure or...
No.
So if that hadn't happened, would he still be alive?
Look, he outlived all of his life expectancies.
Yeah.
So he was given 6 months to live, then he beat that by 2 years. Then they told him, okay, another 6 months, and he beat that by a year. Then they're like, all right, 3 months, then he beat that. So he just kept beating all
Was
of...
he ever in remission or no? Or no evidence of disease?
I think
is what they call
once,
it.
maybe very, very early on, when they actually had to cut his toe off because that's where the cancer started.
What kind of cancer was it?
It's called clear cell sarcoma. It's a cancer of the soft tissue, extremely rare. So they cut that off, and I think maybe then they thought he mightn't have had anything, but really he had it the whole time, and they just couldn't pick up on things. And then it just got really, like, it metastasized very, very quickly, and the spread. He was stage 4 for years.
But he lived with it.
Yeah,
And that's
he
good.
did.
I mean,
he was
Yeah.
incredible. If you see, I'll show you some pictures of him, like 3 months before, you wouldn't believe it. You wouldn't believe that this guy was unwell. He was such a fighter. He was so strong. Essentially, maybe if that tumour didn't grow in that particular artery, he could have maybe had longer. But I think with the amount of cancer that he had, where do you go with it? Do you know what I
That's
mean? It's
right.
not like we're dealing with one tumour that we can sort of do targeted therapy. It was
Well, that's why
Yeah.
they do the chemotherapy, and that's the thing that they did with my husband, because I was like, well, if the cancer's in the lymph nodes, is this the right, should we be doing a whole body? And that's what she said. She goes, no, you need to wipe the whole slate clean. So when you do the chemotherapy, you're resetting all the cells. And then, of course, you had all those people that were like, don't let him do chemo.
That's
all
right.
those
How many
sort of
times
things.
do you
It's
hear that,
poison.
right?
I'm like, I get it, and I know,
But
and
what
I'm
do you
scared.
do?
But what do you do?
That's right.
Like,
That's
and you know
right.
the thing that people don't understand, I feel as well, okay, don't do chemo, fine. You want us to do a natural remedy. We're on a time limit.
That's
we
right.
We can't stop, just tell the cancer, just hold on, let us figure out a remedy and let's start treating you.
That's exactly right.
This person's life is like day by day, it's decreasing. So we need to do something. We need to do it now. So
Exactly.
I understand the notion of chemotherapy being poison. And don't get me wrong, I've had a lot of people who have come to me and said, yeah, my mum was okay. She did chemo. She died a week later. And I believe it. I know chemo's poison. But at the end of the day, what do you do?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
You have no choice.
You don't have a choice. Absolutely.
The thing is with chemotherapy, what my husband said to me, I think it's how strong your mind is as well when you're doing
Yeah.
it.
Big.
He was so strong. At one point, he was going through chemo. You couldn't even tell. I mean, he would have his
Incredible.
bad days, and they were like after he got the treatment, and in that week, it was I called it chemo week.
Yeah.
That was really hard.
Yeah.
Because he wasn't vomiting as much, but he had like nausea. He had a lot of reflux. So I was just getting
Yeah.
Gaviscon,
Yeah.
all of that sort of thing. Very tired, and he just needed to be like quiet, dark, alone. So I'd let him sleep, but then I'm thinking, okay, I don't want to make noise in the house and everything, so I'd make it my way to make sure that I wasn't disturbing him and everything like that, and that he'd just be asleep in the dark, because that's what he needed to do.
Yeah.
And then like I'd call it sick bay, so he'd sleep in the other room, obviously, through those, because I didn't want to disturb him.
Yeah.
He also didn't want to disturb me because I was a light sleeper.
Yeah.
But the thing is, like, he probably doesn't even know this, but I would wake up in the night and like go check his fever. I don't know if he ever heard the thermometer in the middle of the night and all of that. But I was basically like, I don't know. I barely slept.
And I think when you know what their symptoms are, like you're always going to be mindful of that, right? Because you're going to keep. Yeah, you are. Like I remember one of my husband's symptoms from chemo was that he couldn't be around anything cold. Okay. So, and even so much opening the fridge and getting a bottle of water from the fridge, it felt like he was getting knives stabbing him in the hand, for example.
Yeah, of course.
If, he was out in the cold, knives stabbing his whole body. Yeah. So I think, as a support person and as their spouse, you're always going to be mindful of, their symptoms post chemotherapy, because you want to try all you can to kind of minimize it if you can minimize it. Like I always made sure Mick was, he had jackets on and a warm blanket, and because anything, even like a little bit of cold air on him just like felt like it was knives.
For sure.
Yeah. So I can understand you waking up in the middle of the night.
We turn into like their like little protectors, for that period. Like it's. And
like I just go and check, make sure he's still breathing. Like, okay.
Things like that, right? But how traumatic
that's
is
what I mean. You're going to do that. Yeah.
You do. Like, it's like, it's not easy. The position that a carer or whatever, a wife or whoever's looking after that person, family member plays is such a tough one, mentally and physically too.
Can I ask you, you know how your husband went through that the second time around, and you said that it was you became stronger.
Yes.
Do you think that you became stronger because you knew that after the first time he got better and he was in remission, and so that possibly second time?
I don't think it was that. Look, it may have even been the medication I was on as well, and all the work that I had done. Maybe I was controlling it better. Right. I was still anxious and everything. I just wasn't letting it affect me and stop me from doing everything I had to do.
That you needed to do,
I think that was the difference. And because I was already on anxiety medication and all of that, so that sort of leveled me out. But again, I was also numb. But also I guess seeing him going through chemo, because he was so strong, and like he never showed me that he was suffering. Like I could tell in bits and pieces, but he was always like, no, I'm good, he's tough.
Aren't they amazing?
I was just going to say, I think males,
he's so tough. Like, they talk about the males that have head colds and they're like, I need to be in bed. He's not like that. This guy went through chemo. And he was still working as well. Like he'd have the 2 weeks off and then he'd go back to work on the third week. But it was good. We wanted to keep normalcy and everything like
of course.
that. Yeah. And all of that. He was going for walks and everything. And he was just eating so much.
Really?
Yeah. He put on weight in chemo.
Wow.
Yeah. And he was eating so much. Wow. And like I remember, I'm like, far out. If we have to do any more chemo, we're going to eat us out of house at home, man. Like, so I would like pack him a sandwich for the chemo days because he hated the hospital food.
Yeah, of course.
Because they gave him on the first day, they gave him like one of those, like those plastic cheeses that you get with like a sandwich, and he's like, I'm Italian. I don't eat. What is this? Yeah. He's like, this isn't enough.
How funny.
And so like I would either have the leftovers or I'd pack like 2 sandwiches, and then like I'd give him like a whole packet of Tim Tams and chips and stuff, and then he'd come back and I'm like, did you eat this whole packet?
Yeah.
And like here I'm thinking, like he'd share some with the nurses, but no, he ate most of it.
He ate it all. Yeah,
but he was eating like double the amount.
Wow.
He was eating so much during chemo. Yeah, and he actually, he put on weight. He didn't lose weight.
Wow, that's interesting.
That is interesting,
Yeah, I was like, you're looking a bit fat. Like,
I love that. Yeah, good.
Yeah.
It's, I mean, the notion usually is that when they are diagnosed the second time, it's usually the worst, right? I feel like
that's what, I've heard. So where is is he at the moment? So now he's
We
getting
got very
6.
lucky.
Yeah.
Our doctor is very good. My husband is very on the ball with himself and his health, and he doesn't. And that's a long thing about men. So the type of cancer my husband had, I think a lot of men just would ignore it and be ashamed or whatever. But my husband didn't do that.
Good on him.
And you know, he went and he got himself checked out, and he's really like on the ball. He checks himself. He's good. And if he notices a change, that's when he went, because that's what happened. He noticed a change.
Absolutely.
But we had a scan, and the scan was the cancer was so minute in that lymph node that it didn't get picked up on that scan that we just had.
Yeah.
Right.
So, and then that, you know, just talking about that just goes back onto my fears that scans don't pick things up.
That's
you know what I mean?
That's right.
But that's a side note.
Yeah.
I can't get myself into that rabbit hole.
Yeah.
But yeah, you've just got to trust. And he felt something different. He was like, no, this feels different. This feels harder. Straight back to the doctor, and the doctor was like, oh, I only saw you 2 weeks ago. What's going on?
Yeah.
So that's, you know, that's another thing. So he advocates for himself
Yeah.
as well. And I think that if he wasn't so strong, I wouldn't have been able to get through this either.
Of
So
course.
I'm very lucky that he was good. And he was strong, and he was like, yep, whatever you want me to do, doc, I'll do. Like, throw it at me. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
You've got to amputate this, no problem. You've got to cut
So
this,
resilient.
no problem.
So resilient.
Yeah, but you know, say if that was females or anything, we would probably have a cry if they had to cut
Yeah,
off our
could
finger,
definitely.
for example.
Of course.
Imagine going through what Mohammed went through. I could not.
Yeah.
Like, I know you do find the strength when you're in that position and, you know, whatever, but watching him go through the chemo, the radio, the tablets, the drugs, the surgeries.
It's a lot.
It's
a lot.
I wouldn't wish it upon anyone. It is
is.
so so something has to be said like about these men. Like, they're pretty, it's so impressive.
Yeah.
And I love hearing stories like you sharing your story, or Mohammed or Mick. Like, I just, like, it shows so much strength, so much resilience, and so much not wanting to make your wife upset or make your wife, like, how do you think that? Like, I'm sorry, I'd just be thinking about myself, you know what I mean? And sympathy, and poor me, and look what I'm going through. Whereas these guys are like,
and that's what was happening to me. I'm having a mental breakdown here, like, poor me.
That's right.
I got everyone worried about me too. They
Yeah.
should be worried about me. And, you know, and I felt horrible because I didn't even know how to control it. And that's how I was like, no, I need to get better so I'm stronger, you know, and need to be strong. And I've got to put my big girl, like one of my best friends was like, you need to put your big girl pants on. Yeah. And you're going to do this.
And it's great that you had a friend like that to sort of pull you into line.
I've got a few my best friends, and I don't know what I'd do without them.
Yeah.
I'm with you. Absolutely.
Definitely.
Wow.
And parents as well. Like, obviously we don't have his parents.
Having a good support network,
parents,
that being
my brother.
your family, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's so important.
Yeah, it is.
Exactly. It is. It's good. And extended family as well. Like, it's very good to have a good support system.
So how are things now with him? Like, I know he's very positive and resilient, etc. Do you think he has a bit of health anxiety? Or
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
He is the type that's, okay, if there's something wrong, we'll go to the doctor. We're not going to sit there and play games and guessing games and go to Dr. Google, because I've seen what that's done to you.
Of course.
We've actually, we literally this week, his brother's not well, so we're taking him to get some blood tests and stuff. And then I started a little bit on my tangents, and he's like, no, we're not doing that.
Stop.
Yeah. He's like, we're not playing Dr. Google. We're taking it to the doctor. The doctors will tell us. That's one thing we've learnt about this. I've seen what overthinking and the doctor Googling does to you. You know, I'm not going to lie, I may have Googled things and everything like that.
Of course.
But
Everybody.
I'm not letting it get to me.
Yeah.
And that's what I've learned in, becoming better and like learning all the techniques and stuff to like control your anxiety and all of those sort of things.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So essentially, like, he's beat cancer twice, right?
Yes.
Like, that's
and
amazing.
It's so scary because like I thought I was going to lose him twice. And that's, you know, you just think like, oh my God, you know, when you get married and, you know, because, you know, in my head, I'm like, okay, I'll get married, have kids, blah, blah, blah. Like, life hasn't gone to that plan at all.
And it never does, really.
No, and we haven't had kids yet and all of those sort of things.
Yeah.
And, you know, we just want to like start our lives every single time. You know?
Can I ask,
Yes.
you don't have to answer if you don't want to, his cancer, does it affect having children?
We don't know. Okay. We froze sperm just in case.
Good.
Yeah.
But we'd like to try naturally.
Yeah.
And then see.
Yeah.
We had to wait like a year after chemo.
Yeah.
Did you guys get told?
I did IVF because when Mohammed was first diagnosed, he was, so it was about 8 years ago or 7 years ago back then, the doctor said to him, you need to freeze your sperm because we don't know where this is going to go. Like, yes, you just have what appears to be just cancer of this. Well, actually, they didn't know. They thought it was, what did they think it was? I've gone blank, skin cancer or something.
Same as what they thought my husband was.
Something really pretty minor that can just be sort of cut out and dealt with. But the doctor, thankfully, was like, no, you should freeze your sperm. We don't know the journey that this is going to take you on, so freeze it. So he did back then. And then after we got married and wanted to have kids, there was we could not have kids naturally. The drugs that he was on, like
it wasn't possible. Okay, so my husband's not on any drugs or anything. He had the chemo. Yeah, he'd be clear now. It's been exactly a year.
That's right.
Yeah. Did you ask like if the chemo would have affected him in any way?
Well, that's when she was like, we don't recommend anyone get pregnant in
just for the 12-month period.
Yeah.
Right.
Or that. But then when my husband went back again, he said that no, the doctor said it was fine if it happened within the 12 months. Okay. And I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
It's a bit confusing.
So it is possible to fall pregnant.
But you've surpassed that period now anyway of 12 months.
But we have the frozen sperm if we need to go down that route as well.
Yeah.
Of course.
But yeah, it's just very scary. And then there's the fact that like, okay, what if this comes back again?
Of course.
I live with that every day. And I'm sure my husband does too. He just doesn't let it get to him.
Oh, look,
that's right.
I couldn't imagine how, I feel like he'd be having those thoughts. I mean, I'm not your husband, I don't know. But if I had gone through that, God forbid, I'd be having those thoughts too. I don't think I could ever have like total peace
health-wise.
I don't think anyone has total, the way our brains think. I mean, like, do you guys...
You're forever living on edge.
Yeah. Like, I don't know about your kids. Are they affected by their dad's passing? Like, do they think something's going to happen to them as well?
My children, they don't have health anxiety at the moment.
Yeah.
But
they could develop it.
They could,
right? Because they're still. I mean, they're not kids. But
they could
kids,
develop it.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
I think like
mine was actually triggered from when my grandfather passed away when I was like 19.
Wow.
Then I saw him go through chemo and he had lung cancer. Right. And everything like that.
So you had seen that before. Yeah. So, you know, my son, he passed away when my husband passed away when my son was 7 months old. So my son was too little to remember, but I have health anxiety for him now. Yeah. So I'm really pedantic about, like, I really push doctors. My son has this thing on a particular part of his body. It's like, you would think maybe it's like a little beauty spot, but it's in a weird shape. So I'm pretty sure he was born with it, or he got it a few months after he was born. And I went to the dermatologist a while ago and I pointed it out and they said, oh, you know, it's okay, but you just have to monitor the growth, because if it grows beyond what he's growing at a different rate, then it could become something. So we just have to monitor it. But I'm like and I tell them, I'm like, you need to understand, like, my husband had such a rare cancer. And I'm not going to just like, oh, it's okay, it's a little mole. No, and the amount of stuff that I've been through with doctors and my husband and misdiagnosing and getting it wrong and fucking up this and fucking up that. And you could have lived longer. You could have been like, I have been through it all in terms of doctors making mistakes. So with my son, I'm like, crazy.
I'm not taking that risk.
No way. And I think, you know what? I don't think anyone should take that risk, to be honest.
No, when it comes to your health, I don't think anyone should take the risk. At the end of the day,
doctors, they're humans. They make mistakes. They're just people. You
Definitely.
know what I mean? I could become a doctor and then I went to uni too. Like, they're humans. Exactly right. They're not perfect. So it's your responsibility to look after your own health and monitor yourself, essentially.
Exactly. But in saying that, that's when you've kind of got to draw the line of, are you with your anxiety, if it's going to get too much, or it's not, and that's the hard part, and that's what I had to learn to do.
Yeah, that's right.
And it's still a learning curve every day. Every day,
of course,
you fight those thoughts, and that 100%. You work on yourself, and that's with everybody. Everybody works on themselves every day, and you need to.
Yeah.
But you just need to be kind to everyone, because everyone has their own struggles. And
that's exactly right.
Couldn't agree more. You don't know what anyone is going through. No. You know, people, I mean, if you saw if I walked past you on the street, you look happy. You
would have no clue.
No clue.
And that's
at all.
One thing. So many people are like, oh, I didn't know you suffered from anxiety. I don't look like a person that suffers from anxiety.
Yeah. Yeah. I get that a lot. People freak out that, and Nadine knows, I'm a ball. Yeah. Like anytime I'll just call, hi, I'm not well. I don't feel well. I'm sick. I have anxiety.
Or
Why?
she'll
I don't know.
text me.
Yeah, I'm sick. Health.
Flood my phone. Yeah, anxiety.
And I don't come across as that person at all, because I'm like, usually chill and people whatever, but really deep down, like I'll just wake up anxious over nothing. I don't even know what's wrong with me. So it is important. That's such a nice message, just to be kind to everyone. You know,
I have one question.
Yes.
Okay.
Only because we literally just had a lawyer on.
Yes.
So I just we were discussing wills and how important it is and stuff like that. And I mean, for me, I didn't have any of those conversations with my husband before he passed away. So just considering that your husband has gone through this twice.
We don't have a will yet, but we need to. It's on the list. Okay. But I just think it's been put off because of everything. And I also really don't want to, I don't like talking about it. I don't want to bring it up with him. I don't want to talk about it because then it thinks that's like, oh my God, he's going to die.
It's exactly how I used to be.
This is how we felt. We felt the same thing, but I also think that in hindsight, I know that I should have had that conversation.
Did it make it harder for you when
it did? And that's why
probate and
so my husband didn't have a will. So that was the problem for me.
The estate.
So I had to do a letters of administration, and then that was
and then anyone could have claimed on it, and
it was a whole thing.
And can I just highlight? Yes, I understand your husband's had cancer, but even you, I mean, thank God you're in full health, but even a will is important for anyone. And we literally just said, healthy or not, do a will. It doesn't matter. I could walk out of here and get hit by a bus.
100%. You should have a will, especially if you have assets, children,
absolutely,
houses, anything like that.
But I get what you're saying too. It's uncomfortable.
It's a scary.
Well, that's how we felt. Or that's how I felt. Sorry, at the time.
You feel almost rude, to bring up, hey babe, let's think about your will, especially when they have been sick. If they hadn't been, it's a bit different because it's like, no, it's just a chat. Like this is things we need to do. We're adults now, but when they have gone through something, it's a bit like treading on, know. But well, it was so great to have you join us.
Thank you
so much. We appreciate you coming on and sharing your story.
Thank you for having me.
And your husband's story. And we appreciate him letting you share that on his behalf as well.
And if he wants to come on, please just let us know.
He's always welcome.
We'd love to have him on as well.
Definitely. All right, guys. We hope you enjoyed that episode. A little bit different, a little bit on mental health and anxiety, and I think that's super important to talk about. As always, Married Now Widowed, you can find us on all platforms. If you have any questions that you want to send through, please do so. Otherwise, we'll see you next week. Bye, guys.
Bye.